Hello and welcome back. In this chapter, we're going to be covering wisdom. Let's listen to what Confucius had to say about wisdom. By three methods, we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest. So, in this saying, Confucius is sort of approaching something that a lot of people believe, which is that experience confers wisdom. That by having lots of experience in life, we will ultimately become wise. And you may have that sort of association that older people are wiser than younger people. And that might be true. It's possible. But you may know some older people who are not very wise, who maybe don't make good personal decisions, maybe they don't give good advice, they don't maybe seem to have a big picture awareness of how the world works. So you might be wondering, with so many more years of experience than I have, how are you not more wise? How are you not more sophisticated in sort of understanding, the lessons from life? It's possible that that person has had a lot of experience, but maybe hasn't done a lot of reflection, right? That's the noblest, according to Confucius, being able to look at your own experiences, your own role that you might have played in those experiences, making them happen or interfering with them, whatever. And that reflection is how we learn from our experiences, and that is how we ultimately gain wisdom. Now, I want to point out in the second example, imitation, what he's pointing to here is that you can find a good, trustworthy, wise person and model your behavior on theirs. And then at least you will appear to be wise because you're doing the same things that a truly wise person is. Through imitation, you may ultimately internalize that, right? You may ultimately internalize the ways to act. Observational learning talks about that, right? The idea that we learn through modeling. Alcoholics Anonymous says, fake it till you make it. If you act like a wise person, maybe one day you will become a wise person. So imitation should not be dismissed. Just because he said it's easiest doesn't mean that it's a bad way to gain wisdom. Any route to wisdom is worthwhile. It's probably a little bit more complicated to become truly wise than we think it is, though. It's not just a matter of getting older. One factor that contributes to our ability to become wise is our degree of emotional intelligence. We've talked about emotional intelligence already in this class. In this chapter, there's actually a scale that you can take to help to estimate your level of emotional intelligence. So if you pop on over to page 99 and it flops over a little bit to page 100, you can take this self-assessment that's designed to measure emotional intelligence. There are lots of different scales available. I'm not exactly sure why the workbook chose this one, but this one gets at some of the different kinds of, a little bit wider variety of things that can contribute to emotional intelligence. So that might be part of why they picked it. So it's 33 items long. If you want to pause me and go ahead and complete the scale and find out how you score and then come back and join me, I'll talk about what it means to have certain kinds of scores. So go ahead and pause me. All right, hopefully you're back and have taken the scale, hopefully. So in case you didn't read the instructions on how to complete the process, you only have 3 items that you have to reverse code, which is nice. Then you add up your scores. Higher scores on this scale indicate greater emotional intelligence. Higher scores are associated with lots of different measures of psychological well-being. So higher scores on emotional intelligence are associated with higher scores on optimism, on physical health, college freshman grades, romantic relationship success, positive, having more positive moods, having higher self-esteem, and with lower levels of depression and with lower levels of impulsiveness. So pretty much everything that has been measured that could be an indicator of psychological well-being has been correlated with emotional intelligence, sort of in the direction that you would expect, right? That higher emotional intelligence is associated with more of the positive outcomes and with lower levels of the negative outcomes. So it seems like psychological well-being is, dare I say, dependent on emotional intelligence, or that maybe emotional intelligence is dependent on psychological well-being, something like that. They really go together very strongly. I can't make a causal sort of assertion because this is correlational research. But what some people have asserted is that because emotional intelligence, or what they like to call EQ, is so tightly connected to so many things, that it's actually more important for success and outcomes in work and in life and in school, then it's more tightly tied to those outcomes than in regular intelligence, cognitive intelligence. So is that true? Is emotional intelligence more important for your success in life than cognitive intelligence? Well, let's look at the evidence that they've provided. This is from a website called Funderstanding, and it's from 2011. So that's something to keep in mind, that there was a big heyday of emotional intelligence. It started in the late 1990s, and it sort of went through the mid teens, maybe approximately, and it's kind of stalled out. So keep that in mind as we go through this. All right, so remember Daniel Goleman from the last time that we talked about emotional intelligence. He was talking about how he talks about emotional literacy, right, to make it even more of a hot button issue than just EQ or emotional intelligence. And he talks about how the best remedy for dealing with our emotional shortcomings is to develop emotional intelligence, to have this toolkit that would contribute to resilience and being able to cope in hard situations. So what I wanted to show you here is this list of exactly what is emotional intelligence. And I wanted to show it to you in context because I think it's important to see that people are maybe overreaching the claims that relate to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a concept. It's something that we maybe kind of sort of know what it is, but it's really hard to concretely define. So look at this list of things that they placed here. Exactly what is emotional intelligence? Self-awareness, mood management, self-motivation, empathy, and managing relationships. So none of these are concrete things, are they? None of these are concrete, directly observable factors that we could point to and say, oh, there, you've got a 15 on that. Oh, you've got a 1 on that. Like there's nothing here that would be quantifiable. All of these are concepts. So we're defining a concept with a concept, right? What is self-awareness? Okay, well, they give us a definition: knowing your emotions, recognizing feelings as they occur, and discriminating between them. Okay. What does it mean to know your emotions? I can label them. Is that what you mean by knowing your emotions? Does it mean that I'm aware when I'm having one? Sometimes we don't know that we're feeling scared, or we're feeling angry, or that we're feeling lonely, or whatever emotion. We may not be completely aware of that. So is it just being able to label emotions, or is it being aware when you're having them? Or maybe something even deeper? We don't know. These are concepts, and they're presenting it as something concrete. Exactly what is emotional intelligence? Well, you're defining emotional intelligence with a series of concepts that do not really help us to understand exactly what you mean by that. Empathy. Okay, we all know what empathy means. There's a debate over what all is included in empathy. It's a concept. It's not a directly observable thing. Hopefully I'm making my case that we don't really know what emotional intelligence is. And then we go into why do we need it? And it says we need in order to be emotionally intelligent and then be able to actually display cognitive intelligence, or what they call brain-based learning. I would like to know what other kind of learning there is. I know some people claim that there's like muscle learning, but that's not actually, that still relies on your brain. So what kind of learning doesn't involve your brain? That sounds like a really good question to answer also, doesn't it? But okay, look at this list of concepts: confidence, curiosity, intentionality, self-control, relatedness, capacity to communicate, ability to cooperate. Again, a list of concepts that are not the best we can do with emotional intelligence is the best we can do with regular intelligence, which is operationally define what we mean. So I suggested that you take that scale, and all I can say is if you take, whoops, I went too far. If you take that scale, whenever we talk about emotional intelligence, we're going to be using that number that you got on that scale as a stand-in for whatever we mean by emotional intelligence. That's what an operational definition is. It's a concept, and so as a result, we don't really have anything but operational definitions for engaging with it. So I hope you don't think I'm being too negative about emotional intelligence, because I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to point out that we shouldn't embrace emotional intelligence as if it's an entity, as if it's an actual thing, when it's not, any more than you would embrace regular cognitive intelligence as a thing. All these is concepts that we've developed scales for measuring. So please be careful. That's all I could say. So, but let's talk about the concept of emotional intelligence through what Salovey, Mayer, and Caruso call a model of emotional intelligence. So models are shy of the level of certainty that you would expect in a theory. Theories have lots of data that has accumulated, and now we have this theory that helps to explain this pattern that has been observed across all of these different and varied studies. We don't have that in emotional intelligence. So Salovey, Mayer, and Caruso developed a model. So we've got emotional intelligence, and it's being made up of emotional perception and expression, emotional facilitation of thought, emotional understanding, and emotional management. Okay, so these, according to Salovey, Mayer, and Caruso, are the components that make up emotional intelligence. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a small sidetrack. At the bottom, I've provided the citation, the reference for this citation, and you notice that it's published in the Handbook of Positive Psychology. This would be what we would call a secondary source, in the sense that they're developing a model, they're not collecting fresh data. So they're integrating research that has come before them. So just FYI, in case you're thinking, ooh, maybe I could read this source for my article analysis for the next section, this would be an example of a secondary source that doesn't count. So now you could read it and look at its reference list, because then it has citations to some original research. Okay, back on track. So I'm still working on that behavioral control thing of trying to stop saying so all the time. The first issue is emotional perception and expression. Let's go ahead and take a little break here, and we will come back in the next video and talk about emotional perception and expression.